there is a cost, if you will, to diversity, but the ROI is much greater, right? Harvard has shown it, life has shown it, mathematics show it. Um, there's no place in our world where it's not better if everyone has an equal access and can actually work equally in tech.
It has been well established that companies with more ethnic, cultural, and gender diversity are more innovative and profitable than those without. Being intentional about diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy simply makes good business sense. But how do you do that? What strategies actually work? This podcast tells the stories of visionaries who are actually changing the diversity landscape of tech and explores the strategies they're using to become more diverse by design. This is Nia Darville, your host, and you're listening to the Diverse by Design podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the Diverse by Design podcast. On this episode, I have the pleasure of interviewing Hank Spraggins, Senior Director for Technology Strategy, Data Engineering, and Operations at Dropbox. Hank has a degree in computer science from Drexel University. Recently, he relocated to the Bay Area where he works at Dropbox, the fastest software as a service company to reach $1 billion in revenue. His responsibilities include strategic IT platforms, IT risk, cybersecurity and governance, SWE director for employee applications, and vendor management. Hank also leads the Black Dropboxer mentoring program as part of Dropbox's employee resource groups. Professionally, he has had several roles as a leader, roll-up-your-sleeves technologist, SaaS at scale cloud strategist, and program executive across various industries. He has led transformations and managed teams more than 100 employees strong and is responsible for critical programs and services. He is an engineer at heart. He's married to a wonderful school principal and teacher, and together they have 3 business-minded daughters and 1 technically minded entrepreneurial son. Thank you so much for being with us today, Hank.
Thank you, Nia. I'm really grateful and thankful to be part of this podcast.
So first, Hank, tell me a little bit more about your journey to understanding and advocating for diversity, equity, and inclusion. What's your story?
Sure, Nia. Actually, my story starts out quite unusual. I was, like many folks who identify as Black, the only person in the room. Still in the 21st century, still the only person in the room. And I thought it was kind of normative, right? I didn't think of anything of it. I didn't think it was unusual. I just thought it was the way things are, especially in the tech field. Because when I went back to my high school and my college, Drexel University, and comp sci major, there weren't a lot of Black folks in those majors. And so when I got in corporate America, I thought it'd be more of the same. It wasn't until I'm a bit of an introvert, so it wasn't until I took some time away from the job and started reading some Harvard Business Review articles about race matters. And these are old articles. I had to dust them off, but the premise was very, very powerful. It said that those who are Black are highly skilled and have the intention to grow up the corporate ladder. However, they reach a plateau or that quote unquote glass ceiling as a as a senior or middle manager. And they reach it pretty quickly and frustration kicks in. But what Harvard Business Review found was that when there are programs to actually reach out to Blacks and to reach out to these middle managers and mentor and sponsor them, that they excel and that they actually do, no offense to anyone else, but they actually do better than all their counterparts in terms of productivity, team leadership, driving sales lift for their companies, driving innovation, and all the things that you would want a company to do. And so race does matter. And that's when I found out that, if we don't have programs and if we're not intentional about reaching out to folks who identify as Black and other minorities, we're not going to have companies that excel the way we want them to. So that's kind of how I got involved.
Wow. So talk to me a little bit more about that Harvard Business Review case you mentioned. What exactly is the business case for diversity?
Yeah. So what happens in these companies that Harvard identified was that when you have a glut of middle managers who aren't excelling, what happens is that your sales lift starts to plateau, your insights into your consumer or your customer, who is typically diverse, begin to fade. And also you have, this horrific turnover. And essentially you have what we sometimes see even today, the revolving door of Black hires. That is, we hire someone, we hire 10 people, they stay for 2 years, don't feel included, don't feel the inclusion, and then they leave, and then we hire 10 more, right? And then we
Mm.
hire 10 more, right? But we're never getting both groups to have 30, right? If you do 3 cycles of that. And so what Harvard was saying was that if you really want to achieve your business results, whether it's in manufacturing and you're looking for a Six Sigma, or whether you're in sales and you're looking for a sales lift with a product, or you're in marketing and you're looking to how you can drive household penetration, or you can drive a better consumer integration, or you're in tech and you're looking to build technical platforms for people of different need sets, no matter what that is, if you are not actually including everyone and mentoring and sponsoring everyone equally, then you are doing a disservice to your company and to your customer. And it was
Wow.
very profound. And this was not just words. I'm using words, but anyone could pick the article up. It's statistically sound. And it is based on some stories also. So it has both, right? It appeals to the head and to the heart. And so, yeah, I mean, that became the crux of my, if you will, my faith system around
Yeah.
diversity and inclusion.
Yeah. So, how have you brought that? You just described it as a faith system. How have you brought that into your job, into your organization throughout your career?
Yeah. Strangely, very organically. Um, I don't know. Maybe it's the way I smile, or maybe it's the way I talk. I don't know what it is. But when I do recruiting activities for my company or recruiting activities for other companies I've worked for in the past, I get this entirely diverse slate of individuals. And when I say entirely
Mm.
diverse, I get older Black men who are looking for a career change in tech. I get young white women who are looking to get into tech. I get people who have been in the tech for many years, who are Black, Latino, Indian. I get this whole crux of interest from different people. And everywhere I work, every single one of my teams is one of the most diverse teams. When I worked at
Mm.
Accenture, my team was so diverse that they had the pictures up at the managers forum of my team. Right, right, right. Um, uh, at my current company, my team is somewhere around 60 to 80% URM,
Mm.
right? And these are all folks I hired. And these are folks who, and I say URM, I'm including women in that too.
Hmm.
These are all folks who I've hired, and but I had no prior experience with none of them except for one person. So
Yeah.
this is just, when you care about this, it happens organically.
Yeah.
No one asked the question of, how'd you become a really good programmer, right? And people say, well, I took some classes, but really it's just working it. Well, okay, so there really isn't a shortcut. No, you just have to believe in it and actually work it. And
Yeah.
so because I believed it and worked it, and that's my encouragement to everyone else who says that they want to actually hire a diverse workforce. The question is, are you working it? How many times have you been to Atlanta? How many times have you been to an HBCU? How many times have you, mentored someone who doesn't look like you? And
Wow.
those answers are, never, rarely, sometimes. Well, that's not good enough, right? You're
Mm.
not building memory muscle. So yeah, and so it's just part of my lifestyle. It's part of how I do, and it just breeds more and more. It's like a snowball effect.
Mm. Wow. So, in previous conversations we've had, you mentioned that in order for the American tech workforce to remain competitive on a global scale, we have to lean into developing and hiring diverse talent. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean this is the great conundrum of tech and STEM, right? Like I laugh about it, right? I've been doing math since I was a kid. I've been doing comp sci since high school. I remember one of my first programs was to create an array and find a palindrome, that whether or not a word was a palindrome, and a test, one of my first things. These are all math, right? This is just straight math. And the straight math is this: the percentage of African Americans, the percentage well, let me start with African Americans. The percentage of African Americans with a technical degree is not represented in Silicon Valley or represented in tech after they graduate. That
Mm.
means that there's a set of folks who are actually being outside of the workforce that they went to school for. So these folks have paid for a 4 to 5 year college, and they're not getting the benefits of that because there just isn't the inclusion, right? Like, and I know it has to be an inclusion because it's a mathematical exercise. If 6% of the people have comp sci majors who are black, and only 3 to 4% are in tech, well and if tech needs more people and tech has a supply problem, well, then one way to address it is to get all those people who you're missing out on, right? Simple
Yeah.
math, right? Then the other simple math is, and this is one I love to pull out for Asian, because, as a black person, sometimes if you say black too much, people just think that you're only supporting your cause. But let's look
Yeah.
at Asians, for example. Asians represent 40% of the tech hiring at entry level, but somewhere around 10 to 20% of the managers. So
Mm.
unless, mathematically speaking, right, right, there's only two conclusions: Asians don't like to manage people. That certainly ain't true.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's some kind of ceiling that's hindering them from managing. And
Mm.
the result of all that is dysfunction, distrust, and disharmony, right? And your company. Your company is becoming toxic without you even knowing it, because you are not addressing inclusion and equity the same way in which you want inclusion and equity in the web, in the internet, in social media, in advertising, in competitiveness, right? Like, this is the same thing all these companies want. All of us want equity and fair access, but we don't even do it within our own companies sometimes. That
Wow.
type of, to speak strongly, hypocritical type of view is not acceptable anymore. And I'm glad that companies like Dropbox and other companies are taking a stand against it. But I don't think not enough, and not quickly enough. Again, I go back to my original point. This is math, right? Like, this is just simple math. The percentage of input versus the percentage of actually extend an offer and accept an offer is off. And then finally, there's been some critique that the schools where predominantly African Americans go to are not of the level of curriculum, and that's why there's a fall off. Uh, Maybe I grew up in a different time, but I started working at Accenture, and we hired people who didn't have comp sci major. We hired people who were just smart and who could learn. And so I imagine a lot of them would fail a programming test, right, if they were given it. But Nia, they worked out well, and some of the best programmers I met had economics degrees because they were good
Wow.
problem solvers, right? So, if companies really are serious, then they would have real boot camps. Maybe they have like boot camp prime or something, where they're bringing in people if they don't have the classical computer science skills. And quite transparently, not every school is going to teach you race conditions and how to default, how to beat them. Not every school is going to talk about semaphore locking and some of the classical computer science norms. And not every school is going to talk about every single type of search and how search has changed over the years and how caching works and all those kind of things, and locking and how to test for concurrency. Not every school is going to do that, but every school is teaching people how to solve problems. And
Mm.
then that can be used if companies are really interested in addressing the gap. So I end with my final point is that this is a math problem. We're all mathematicians, so let's solve it through math.
Wow. I love that. It's very targeted towards the industry that you are in, which is which is tech. And
Mm-hmm.
tech people are problem solvers. So let's solve this problem together. So
Exactly.
my final question for you is that you have a niche interest in making space for more Black women in particular in the tech industry. Why is that so important to you?
It's interesting you said that way, Nia. I think the other way. I don't know that I have such a strong desire to not feel guilty at night. That's what it really
Mm.
is about. Like, um, listen, I haven't met every black woman in the world, obviously, but the black women I have met are hardworking, problem solvers, smart, diligent, and then you look at the management ranks, and there's not that many of them, right? You take an organization like Girls Who Code, and they are enlisting hundreds of young ladies to code. And then you don't see them in corporate America, right? You don't see them
Wow.
taking on those same roles. Uh, if you have anything like called a conscience, you realize that there's this wealth of opportunity, and we all know this, right? Like, statistically speaking, there are more black women going to graduating from college than there are black men, right? I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if the numbers exactly, but they're certainly different, a variance between the two. And so the question then becomes, what are we doing to bring them in,
Mm.
right? Um, and also, what are we doing to create inclusive culture, right? Like, it's one thing to have to learn a complex a logarithm in tech or computer science. It's another thing to have to learn it in a room where a whole bunch of people don't seem to like you.
Mm.
And it's even harder to do in a whole bunch of room where people don't seem to like you and don't think you belong,
Mm.
right? I read this wonderful, sad story of a young lady who, in the UK, she was performing extremely well as a programmer, but left tech. Now, there's two parts of this I'm going to cover, but the first part is that it's sad that she left tech. Here's the reason why she said she left. She got tired of everyone asking her about her hair, the color of
Mm.
her skin, how long her dress was to this day versus last time, how eloquent she speaks, and how surprised they are about her eloquence. Right? That's just
Mm.
awful, right? I mean, I think we call those microaggressions. I think we
Mm-hmm.
call that an aggressive work, style, a hostile work environment. That's one part. The other part is this, and we see this a lot with a lot of her, with this young lady, and also with others in tech. When you leave tech, you're likely leaving a six-figure job. Matter of
Mm.
fact, you're likely leaving a job that pays more than any other job for the actual work and the degree associated with the work, right? You can have an undergraduate degree and make well six figures in tech.
Mm.
So now you leave that. Where do you go? Oh, I'm going to do real estate. Well, last I checked, you can do real estate on the side while you still have a six-figure job until you
Yeah.
build up your real estate portfolio. And so what we're having is we're having people leave economic equality. We're having them leave wealth generation. And I think it does affect women more than it affects any other group. And it's a shame. It's abhorrent. It's unacceptable. It should not be our norm. We live in the United States, last I checked, which is the country of opportunity. And if we do live in the country of opportunity, there should be opportunity for all, right? No one's
Mm.
asking for a handout. No one's asking for to change the bar. All we're asking for is the equal stake and fair access, and we're asked to be left the heck alone and not be asked about how many different hairstyles we have and why it's braided today versus last time. You're essentially asking her, is it her hair, right? But you don't want
Mm.
to ask her that, so you're asking her all these roundabout questions, and you're making her extremely uncomfortable. And I have three daughters, right? I can share with you. Often, uh, they're dressing just to be left alone. It may look like
Mm.
they're quote unquote overdressing to some people, but they're dressing so that no one ever questions their capabilities or their professionalism.
Wow.
Right. This is something that we used to do as younger people. Also, we would when we interview, we did everything it took to make sure that there was no little niche answer that someone would say why they didn't accept us. Oh, I didn't
Mm.
feel comfortable with you. I didn't think that you articulated and kind of I didn't think you had the culture of our
Mm.
company. I didn't think you would fit in. So we do all these things, and even when we do them, we still get tagged and teased, and this is just awful for women. And so I think that we need to address that. And if we do, I think we'll have a much better world and a much better set of products. I mean, imagine products where there's always a black woman at the table in product management.
Mm.
I mean, imagine how those products might fare in the market, right? You
Yeah.
still have all the other opinions at the table, but now you have the black woman's opinion at the table, her insight, her skills.
Yeah.
So I think this could be a wonderful opportunity for companies.
Definitely. How are you, as a senior leader, pushing this forward on your team, in your organization?
Yeah, that's a good question, right? Like, why don't we bring it home, right? So there's a couple things. One is, with the help of many other senior leaders at the company, I started a mentoring program at Dropbox. And this is version 2. When I first joined, I sat down with some people and said, let's create one. We created one really quickly. And it was version 1.0. It was just to say we had something.
Mm.
But 2.0 has been phenomenal, right? We've gotten senior leadership involvement. We have VPs, staff members who mentor Black professionals at Dropbox.
Wow.
And we have access, right? And it begins to start this groundswell. And it's just phenomenal. Like, some of the experiences that people are having, and they're seeing their connections in the Venn diagram. right? There's nothing like when a chief people officer or a CTO sits down with someone who's 5 years in their career who's black, and they see all their commonalities.
Mm.
You know what happens, right? When people see their commonalities, you know what happens during calibration, right? And you know what happens during special project conversations. Oh, maybe Rashida can do that. She and I were talking. I mean, I haven't worked with her directly, but she and I were talking, and she mentioned that she loved ML and AI, and that's something she wants to get into. Now, Rashida would never had that opportunity to talk to the CTO except through a mentoring or sponsorship program. And now
Mm.
those kind of things are happening, and it's the other way around too, right? Like Rashida's like, oh, you know what? Arun isn't he's a pretty nice guy, and I'm finding that Indian culture has some similarities to how I grew up in the South,
Mm.
right? You know how our parents view life and how some things are. I'm seeing commonalities. I'm feeling closer and more intimate, and I'm feeling like I can lean in more because I have something to
Mm.
lean into. Like, let's just be
Mm.
real, right? You can't lean in unless you have something to lean into, right? You have to have a foundation, and you have to have something that you can sense that you can grab towards to do that. Um, and listen, I've been talking around the complexities of tech a little bit, but I'm a technologist. I grew up as a programmer. Now I'm a leader. Uh, let's put it in bare bones. When I have a team who feels that I support them, a diverse team who feels that everyone's treated fairly, right? People just work. They stop having the drama. They stop doing the soap operas. They stop complaining about this build. They stop complaining about this integration that's hard to do because this person didn't have a conversation with them. Because when they feel like when they know that Hank is doing everyone equally and asking everyone to own it and everyone to work together and accept diversity, they know that they can't use that as an excuse. And the good news is, who wants to use it as a crutch? And then they really just start working. Um, I think also, I've mentored a few people in our company. I continue to do that. I can't share any details, but I'm seeing those who I've mentored and connected with, their promotion rates are going up.
Mm.
They feel more comfortable. They're very aware of the space. And in some cases, right, it's not all about the company. Sometimes it's also about reframing how we see things. And so
Mm.
I'm going to continue doing it. I'm going to continue pushing the envelope, continue to ask questions, um, and I'm going to ask for everyone's support because, just to be fair, I speak very passionately, but there are areas where I think I take a back seat too. Like for example, the conversation about we want a diverse hire. I'm not saying my company says this, but I know in some other recent conversations I've heard this. Right? We want to have a diverse slate, but we need to actually hire quickly. I'm sorry, I didn't know those two are mutually exclusive.
Mm.
I guarantee you, if you go to Morehouse and Spelman, you won't have a problem with speed. Oh, I don't
Mm.
want to do that. I want to use my traditional. I want to use my traditional channels. Then you want your traditional responses. I mean, like
Yeah.
everyone knows this. Like, if you want to reach a new customer, you can't keep going to the old customers. Oh, but that's going to cost more money. Yeah, it's called acquisition cost, right? It's right. It's a known thing. But if you really want this, you'll do it. So, I guess I'll leave with that thought that there is a cost, if you will, to diversity, but the ROI is much greater, right? Harvard has shown it, life has shown it, mathematics show it. Um, there's no place in our world where it's not better if everyone has equal access and can actually work equally in tech.
Mm.
So,
Wow. That was powerful. Thank you so much for
oh, thank you.
joining us today and sharing your wisdom with us, sharing your experience. If people want to connect with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, definitely through LinkedIn, Hank Spraggins, LinkedIn. Actually, I Google search myself and Bing myself often. I come up. I just check to make sure the wrong Hank Spraggins doesn't come up. I'm the one and only Hank Spraggins. You'll know me. I work at Dropbox and I worked at Accenture and some other companies, Johnson and Johnson, and so you'll see that in my LinkedIn profile.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, Hank.
Thanks, Nia.
Thank you for joining us today as we discussed diversity in tech with Dropbox's Hank Spraggins. Diverse by Design is powered by Perscolis and the IT Senior Management Forum. To learn more about how we can help your organization become more diverse by design, visit our website at diversebydesign.org. Before we let you go, we want to thank our sponsors, Tech Systems, JP Morgan Chase, Google, Chubb, and Comcast NBC Universal for their support. If you like what you heard, make sure you subscribe to the podcast to make sure you don't miss any insights about how you can make your organization diverse by design. Until next time.